Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
The October 8th Conservation Commission meeting to order. First step is to introduce the members present. I am Dave Short.
Kyle Welch.
Trevor Matera.
Andrew Cobb.
Michelle Crapo.
Keith Whitehouse.
Valerie Fanger.
Bill Campbell.
Kristen Murphy. Oh, sorry.
And I believe Don Clement will be attending virtually also. So.
Dan Chartrand, Select Board Rep.
Boy, you were blended right into the audience. Is there any public comment? I don't see any public, so. I guess the first item then will be a review of the state wetland dredge and fill and shoreland permit application from Foss Motors for a proposed vehicle storage area, tax map 52, lot 112.2. This has been before us previously, and after quite a bit of back and forth, the board did not approve the application for the shoreland or the wetland conditional use permits and indicated as such to the planning board. Following that, Connor, who is not here tonight, attended the next planning board meeting to inform the planning board what our decisions were and why they were that. So therefore, the planning board, the net result was the building that was part of the original plan was taken away, and with that gone, the planning board felt that they had met what they needed to do as far as the use permits go. And Connor was satisfied with their response to that. So now it's back before us to deal with two items: a state wetland dredge and fill, a memo to them, and also the state shoreland, a memo. Brendan Quigley from Gove is here to answer any questions or concerns that anybody on the board has before we take action on this. So I guess, are there any thoughts, concerns before we proceed?
I wasn't here for the August meeting. But I guess my question is, believe that design of the parking lot changed at least once previously from impervious pavement to pervious pavement.
Yes.
Is it still a pervious pavement? That design has largely stayed the same?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It should be on.
Is it on? Is this on? I guess there's no.
It's
speakers.
more for the TV.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thanks, Brendan Quigley from Gove Environmental. Thanks for the bit of background there. That was part of what I had planned to do. We had a fair amount of discussion on the project. And I believe the commission had recommended in one way or another that the loss of the building and just utilizing the field out front for the parking area would be a lot more appropriate proposal. So that's what we ended up with. I wasn't at the planning board, so I don't know all the details of how that actually got approved. But as you said, following that, we had to go we had to prepare the state applications that kind of mirror the CUP, wetlands and shoreline. And so that's what we're here for tonight, for the comment on those two proposals. I have only two plans here, which are the wetland impact plan and the shoreline impact plan. You can see the parking lot is the only thing now that's proposed, and it occupies the existing field almost exclusively, except for a very small portion of what would be the tree line at the back of the field now. The entire parking lot, except for maybe, and I apologize, I don't know exactly where, there's some very small areas of regular pavement, but by and large, the whole thing is porous pavement with under drains as necessary due to the water table. And that's primarily for treatment. The only differences really in terms of the impacts, aside from the building not being part of the proposal anymore, there is one wetland impact this is to the drainage ditch that's along that GTE road. When it did not fall within jurisdiction of the ordinance, it is still a jurisdictional wetland area as far as the state of New Hampshire is concerned, so that's now included. And our total direct wetland impacts are 3,327 square feet. And again, that's to the ditch to cross over between the existing Foss Motor site and this lot, as well as some of the marginal wetland areas at the back of this field, and this very, very small pocket in the middle of the field, which looks to me to be kind of a small sinkhole. In terms of shoreland, it's a little bit different than the Exeter Shoreline Protection District in that Wheelwright Creek is not on the consolidated list of state public waters. It's only the reservoir itself. So the corresponding shoreland zones end at the dam. So you can see that about roughly half of the parking lot is in. This is the so-called waterfront buffer that's, right next to the water. That's all off the property, so there's no work there. The woodland buffer, which is 150 feet, in which there's more restrictive requirements for the maintenance of natural vegetation. We're only just barely impacting that. And far exceeding actually the minimum requirements for that, which is a 25% natural vegetation be maintained. We're with this proposal at 91%, so far exceeding that. In terms of overall impervious cover, with considering the porous pavement, it's just a little over 1.5% of the lot in the shoreland that is proposed impervious with what's existing today. Even if this were normal pavement, it would be just barely over 20%. And the requirement, if that were the case, would be that an engineered stormwater management system be included, which of course we're doing here anyway. So in terms of shoreland, I don't expect this is gonna be much of an issue. All the minimum standards are met, and in fact exceeded by a wide margin. And so the more sensitive areas you're usually dealing with shoreland is in the waterfront buffer, where they have very strict requirements for cutting trees and stuff. So that's completely outside of the property.
Does anybody have any questions for Brendan?
Has the parking lot size changed since the last time it was here, or is it the same?
It ostensibly is the same. It may have changed in some small way, but it's not as if it's really extending further back because the building's not
Okay,
there.
that was the question.
Because the tree line this is the tree line right here. And then this is maybe what you call a shrub line, because the field is maintained, but they kind of stopped mowing where we hung our wetland flags. So we have the resulting shrub line there, but it's really only the back of the field is just that tiny little corner past the trees.
And do you know how much is in the shoreland area as far as square feet now in the state? I think, was that the 250-foot?
Yeah, so all these numbers are on the plan here. So that the total area of the lot that is within 250 feet is 115,813 square feet. And the total proposed disturbance from this project is just over 31,000. But that would include areas that are being graded and not paved, as well as actually, and maybe there's none of these areas, but it would also include areas like in the road where they might be digging the road up and then repaving it when they're done. The real number is that total impervious surface, which is 1,804 square feet, taking into consideration the porous pavement.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I mean, I'll just say that, this has gone back and forth with us a few times, which I think is, in my opinion, appropriate, just for the sensitivity of the resource that we're sort of working around here. I certainly appreciate the amount of work that's gone into the changing of designs, I think removal of some of the major sticking points that we all saw when, it's come to us multiple times. So again, very commendable for, the design that we've sort of ended up with here.
If that's it, I'll make a motion on the state wetland dredge and fill. We send a memo to the state indicating we've reviewed this application and have no objection to the application as proposed.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Okay. Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? There are none. Passes unanimously. On the state shoreland, motion is to send a memo to the state indicating we have reviewed this application and have no objection to the application as proposed.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Be all set.
Thank you.
Brendan.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brendan.
Brendan.
Take care. I'll see you later.
All right. The next item is a major impact standard dredge and fill wetland permit application for 28,418 square feet of permanent wetland impact and 7,636 square feet of temporary wetland impact for Dade Auto Holdings at 146 Portsmouth Avenue for commercial auto dealership located at tax map 51-1.3-3.3-4. And here to make a presentation is Cindy Belsius from SRE Incorporated.
Thank you. So back on December 13th, 2022, I came in, we were in the process of putting together plans for the building of a new dealership right adjacent to Exeter Volvo. At that time, we showed this exact plan that we had a rough draft, and as of that time, we were at 34,520 square feet of permanent impact for the building of this establishment. At that time, we had already had a pre-application meeting with the Wetlands Bureau, so we had a lot of their input. And one of their lines of thinking was to see if we could minimize that anymore, even by tucking it in a little bit tighter. And at the time, when I came here, that December, we were also in the process of looking at what we were going to do for mitigation, and I was looking for some preliminary impact from you guys with that as well. Since then, we have filed the application, and we have managed to minimize more, and we also have temporary impact. But before I step into that, I just wanted to show you the current existing conditions plan. We were just out on the sidewalk tonight. I have the lines kind of color-coded for you. This back, right here, the blue is the highest observable tide line. The purple is the town of Exeter prime wetlands line that was flagged in the field. The pink line here is the 100-foot buffer to that prime wetland line. The orange is the 100-foot tidal buffer line. These are all state setbacks dealing with the state permit. And then this red line here is the 250-foot limit of the New Hampshire DES shoreline zone. All of those lines fall well beyond the extent of our proposed project. When I was in here the last time, we were using a number of 300 feet from Parkman Brook to keep this whole entire development focused up front near the commercial zone and to stay away from the more highly valued and higher functioning wetlands and estuary system out with Parkman Brook. So as part of that, when we did our site plan, it ended up that our proposed new impact would be, for the permanent, 28,418 square feet. But along with that, we were proposing a temporary impact of 7,636 square feet, and that's where this green is, for the point of doing the surcharging with the fill out on site, because the clays down below 10 feet have a lot of connate water associated with the particles, so they have to do the surcharging to pull that water out for the structural stability of the new building. As I noted, we also tucked this back more here. The last time, I think it was you, Mr. Matera, that had a question about the future high tides and where that water would come up. And at that point on this plan, it did get nicked there. Since we have it tucked in, now we've passed that, we don't hit that at all, and I have a little map that shows that as well. So as discussed in 2022, the project team worked to develop the plan as far up front and away from the more important resources in the back. The project focused on impacts to the lower value wetland system located up front, and that's wetland 1A in the function and value assessment. The project will implement a stormwater treatment system that will meet the town's requirements that we met with Kristen not too long ago with the engineer, and they are working on that right now, because we also have to do an AOT permit. So they will be working to meet the current standards that the town of Exeter has for stormwater. Currently, Dan, the owner, has chosen to move forward, and the DES likes the option of the in lieu fee. His in lieu fee for this impact would be $222,000. At this point, I'd like to open it up for questions following up on the sidewalk and anything else that has to do with the application that's in place. We do have a current request for more information from the state. That was a few items. One of them was to flag the prime wetlands out on site, which we've completed, so we anticipate having everything back to her next week.
Was there some discussion with the city of Exeter about the drawing of the shoreland boundary?
There was, and that's something that the project team and engineer are working on. We had come for a meeting with the town because the engineer, prior to putting the application into the state, wasn't quite ready yet to do the town submission. And we wanted to get the process going with the state. So I know that's being worked out right now.
So we don't have I'm not quite sure what that means. So does that mean that you don't have the city of Exeter's shoreland?
Yeah, not on the state plan.
Not on the state plan?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But the state is aware that we're looking for that, correct?
Yeah, so following at the last meeting, the applicant was scheduled to come before you
Right.
at a prior meeting.
Two meetings ago, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And during that time, there was concern that the state deadline would expire, so a memo was sent to the state indicating some of the questions that you had. And that was provided in your packet.
Well, the state responded that they wanted the questions Exeter had answered, essentially is what they said, I think, right?
Would we be getting a copy of that? Because we don't have a copy.
Oh, yep, it's on the town's website in the the meeting packet. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
No, I'm just saying, it's, the state made it a condition, kind of a condition.
Yeah, it said, please address all comments of concern
Exactly.
received from the Exeter Conservation Commission and include a copy of correspondence as part of the response to this letter.
Sure, that's pretty common anytime.
Yeah.
Page, excuse me, page 133 does show the 300-foot Exeter shoreline
Yeah, in the application.
in the application. Will the building encroach on that when we were there today?
Yeah, not on that one. And therein lies, when we went into the meeting, there seemed to be some controversy on where that line was.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this
Project.
says it's approximate.
yeah, the project team is working on that.
Okay, all right.
Will you have any buried petroleum tanks as part of the site?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. How was the site walk?
It was a nice night.
Beautiful. Lovely.
Bushwhacking.
Okay,
Some,
all right,
It's,
Wasn't bad.
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
Anybody at this end have questions?
Who was on the sidewalk? I'm just curious.
It was myself, Keith, Michelle, and Kristen.
Kristen.
Yes.
And you saw the front, the 1A wetland?
We walked the whole property.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went in kind of toward the back end of the Volvo existing lot, or the side of it, I guess, worked our way to Parkman, and then came back on the north side of the property.
Okay.
Yeah, back around.
we were able to use the existing Exeter Volvo to kind of gauge where the end of the project would be out
So
there.
I don't think it's going to encroach on
I,
the three.
I guess one of my questions is, it's a pretty big fill, as it were. So that's a little bit concerning. The that temporary fill, is that for a couple of years, right?
No, just.
Oh, it's
for
not?
one- Yeah, the state DES only allows for one growing season.
Okay, and then it comes off.
So it gets removed right after.
And then that whole green part moves off.
That's gone. The wetlands are restored there. And the way they'll do it is, they put down a black cloth over the vegetation, then the fill goes on top of it.
Right.
And when they're done, they excavate it out, pull the black cloth out, and that vegetation is still very viable.
So Cindy, just to clarify, that the engineering firm concurred that it would only be there for one growing season? Because I know in our staff meeting, he said, I thought 1 to 3 years, that it was impossible to know how long surcharging would take because it depended on how long it would take for the moisture to leach out.
Yeah.
So there's a decision that, or a different
One
additional data that's been collected, or what changed that?
One growing season is essentially a little over a year. So that's what they're mandated to, so it has to be removed at that point. So if it's put in at the end of a growing season, say December, it doesn't have to be removed till, October 15th the following year.
Cindy, would you know where the fill's coming from?
No, I do not know, but, it has to be a certain kind of fill, legal fill to meet the specs for the dealership, the building and everything.
Thank you.
What's going to happen to the other land in back of the project?
Nothing.
Is it going to go into a conservation?
Dan said he might entertain that, yes.
That would be nice.
Yeah. would add on to what you have there now, so.
Right.
Permanently protect it.
Yeah, that would be
So
great.
it's something that I'll speak to him about. We did
Okay.
talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just quickly spin, I don't know if folks at home will be able to see this, but I'll quickly spin around a map that I'm looking at here. This is basically marsh migration at 2100. You can sort of see that finger of red. That's sort of the map I'm looking at now, and you're right. It looks like the boundary just squeaks outside of that, which is great, but it also lends, a chunk of value in my mind to that area behind it.
For the future.
For the future,
So
yeah.
protecting that, yeah.
Yep.
While you guys are mulling it over, Connor did provide a list of questions. I'd be happy to read them into the record if you'd like.
Yes.
Great.
So, and he was unable to be here, but he wondered the estimated time frame of dewatering, and so you clarified that one growing season. And he didn't understand the dewatering process. During this time, would there be stormwater controls? And will the site have exposed soil? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I can talk about a little bit about what I know. I know that during our meeting here that you had that concern about stormwaters during that process. And we will have a plan that does show stormwater during that process. As far as whether the soil is open at that point or not, I don't know. I can't answer that, but we can have the engineer answer that.
But you're submitting a wetland application without addressing stormwater currently?
Well, we
For
have
the
stormwater
surcharging.
for the whole site, but if
For
you
the
have.
surcharging period?
Yeah, so what I can do is I'll answer that. Is that on your list of questions?
That's on the list. So I'm reading questions that Connor Madison raised with
Okay.
regard, who's a Conservation Commission member, with
Gotcha.
regard to the current application that you're looking for action on.
Okay, so what I'll do is that question, when I respond to the other questions that I'll get offline, I'll add that question to it and respond to it and have a plan in there.
So you're looking for the Conservation Commission to take action without that information?
Oh, I'm not looking for anything. You guys got to do what you feel comfortable.
yeah.
And when I respond to other questions, if you feel comfortable at that point, that's fine.
Okay.
So, but I'll definitely respond to those questions.
He had said he had not seen geotech fabric approach for temporary wetland impacts. Was this recommended by the state, and do you have experience utilizing this method?
Yeah, in Rochester, we used it on several crossings for their industrial park, where they used it for temporary going back and forth over the wetland for construction purposes for about a year and a half. And then they took off the top fill, rolled back the black, and it worked out great, the geotextile fabric.
This one I believe you've addressed. He asked, where is the delineation of tidal wetland, floodplain wetland, and inland wetland? I don't know if you did floodplain or inland.
Yeah, we have the jurisdictional inland wetlands right on this first page. That is, yeah, you probably didn't mention, that's the yellow highlight. And floodplain wetlands aren't delineated separately, but there are no floodplain wetlands out here, nor in that drainage there. But as I said, you get the highest observable tide line, prime wetlands, and then the buffers, and then the yellow is the jurisdictional wetland, all encompassing.
And then, sorry, there's several of them, and I can stop if you.
No, go.
Oh, no, I thought they were good questions.
Maybe the applicant is familiar with tidal rules and would elaborate on why this isn't a tidal wetland permit in regards to sea level rise. The wetland system directly connects to a tidal water. Was there any greener methods proposed as opposed to the gray method of the retaining wall? And is there anything stopping the site from having a less steep wetland approach with no wall besides not wanting to reduce the site? I think he means site development.
So that's a lot of questions
It
in
is.
one.
Right, sorry.
I can work my way backwards,
Yeah.
and I don't remember. As far as the site goes, I mean, you were out there on the sidewalk, everything else around it is elevated. And so in order to make that site work, they have to elevate it to connect up to everything. As part of this, one of the things we were doing was taking and treating some of the drainage from the current Exeter Volvo that has been there for quite some time and didn't really have treatment in this back portion here. It's just running right off into the wetland over those steep embankments. So the idea is to make this area level with the rest of the commercial district right around it. The next thing was as far as the retaining wall. Really, retaining walls from the avoidance and minimization point of view, especially minimization, is what we look to do when we want to tuck back impacts. Instead of having a 2-to-1 slope or a 3-to-1 slope, we use a retaining wall. So in order to minimize wetland impacts, there is no other better way in this case over here. Now I forget the rest.
Yeah.
Title permit, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't get permits for future tidal areas. The tidal wetland, which is your prime wetland in the estuary, is from this prime wetland line over here. So we are, here's the 100-foot, the orange line is the 100-foot tidal buffer. And what we have done and been working at this whole entire time is to keep this development up front and away from the more higher quality, high value and high functioning wetlands. And that is the biggest one right there. Was there more in that question? I think there was.
Sea level rise, you said, you had mentioned earlier you had a plan showing.
Yeah, what we did was we put on the current project after tucking it back more. And essentially, it comes to right on the outside. The wall is here, and the final project wall is right across there. So it does avoid impacts to it. Temporary impact in it, but that's going to be gone and irrelevant within one growing season. Was there more in that one question?
I think that was it. I mean, he had asked, with regard to the retaining wall, it was
Yeah.
retaining wall versus a smaller site development.
Yeah.
Was his
Yeah.
question.
Oh. So, I mean, as far as the site goes, for Dan, the dealership has certain size requirements for, what he needs for a building. I mean, he knows what he needs. He knows through Exeter Volvo, the dealership he now owns, and the parking and access around the building and stuff. So I think, he looked at it, his site plan fits all the needs that's required to have that dealership there.
Do you have an anticipated timeframe for returning for local permits?
We'll know soon. We're actually getting together next week on that.
And then the last one, in general, I'm curious how the initial design reduction was designed and why they chose the current scope. It sounds like you answered that based on the requirements for Volvo. It appears your wetland reduction was solely based on results of installing the retaining wall.
Yeah, well, we had a retaining wall before. We actually moved it a little too.
So is it less parking as well?
Yeah, we actually got rid of some of the parking for it.
And then just a statement, he had concerns about a large retaining wall on a wetland system with direct links to tidal water. That's the end of his note.
Does the lack of any drainage plan so far have any bearing on what we're talking about tonight? I mean,
Well, there is a
it's gonna-
drainage plan in the package, but I think it's going to be updated more to meet the current standards for stormwater for the town.
Yeah, because there's going to be, all that stormwater is going to have to be treated somehow.
Yeah, they were looking, and inside the package, you'll find it was an underground detention area, so the treatment would be under the parking lot. If they're building it up so high, they can essentially create that whole underground system for
A
treatment.
cistern, like,
If you look inside there, because I'm not an engineer, it's like giant yellow chambers. Yeah.
they did that at Rockingham Mall, I think.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. But without seeing, okay. Anything else?
Well, I'm just going back to the size of the project, which is pretty big. And it would be nice to nail down the possibility of that conservation, whatever it's
Well, I'll
going to be.
definitely talk to Dan tomorrow. And we had already talked about that possibility because, yeah, as a wetland scientist, that was one of the questions I had, especially because it was already a 100-foot easement that went across the back.
I mean, do we want to hold our decision till we hear back? I mean, that would make a big difference to me.
Well, I do have questions to answer.
Right.
And, I mean, you can wait. I mean, we'll work with you guys. And
Yeah, I would really appreciate that, to hear
Yeah.
back about that.
Okay.
Because I think that's a really crucial part of the project.
Everybody else feel the same way on that?
I do.
Right. Well, no matter what we decide tonight, they're gonna have to come back
Right.
Right.
for
They'll have
our
to come back for
CUP.
local.
Yeah, we have to go
permitting.
through the whole
Right.
local process too, so.
The timeline for state review expires the day before your next Conservation Commission meeting. So.
So what does that
If you
mean?
want to offer comments that are considered in the state wetland permit, you would either need to address those tonight, or you would need to schedule an additional meeting before that expiration date.
Otherwise, the state will, they
They're-
just have to respond, because they have timelines, which they have
Right.
to respond. So if we don't say anything, then they'll move on without us.
So my request for more information is due November 11th. Is that the date you're referring to?
Yep.
Okay. And you're meeting when, the next day?
Yep.
Okay. It's easy for me to ask Kristen for an extension for a day or two. We can do it 2 days so you can meet, and then, by that time, you'll have all our answers to the questions, and then you guys can respond officially before it's done.
That would be great.
That would be great, yeah.
That doable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would encourage you, if there are additional questions, to get them all on the table now, so that when the applicant comes back, they're prepared to address all of them. So if you have additional questions, I would use tonight to bring those up.
Cindy, would you happen to know the deepest point of fill? Like, what's the footage from the deepest spot to where it's going to make it level parking lot?
I can get you that answer, but not without studying the plan and looking at the numbers. And I'll just ask the engineer
Yeah.
to tell me something.
It's got to be
Keith, the
15.
retaining wall is 23.5 feet.
23?
So roughly, it'll be a little below that.
Yeah. It looked like it was all 15 to 20 feet.
Yeah.
It says 23.5
Yeah.
on the plan.
Yeah.
Was it?
That's the height of the retaining wall. The fill's probably, as you say, not that
I
deep,
think the retaining wall's capped up, so
Yeah.
the pavement's down below.
Yeah.
but it gives you an idea.
The
Sizable-
slopes to
sizable amount.
McDonald's probably were around the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Different era.
indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't vote on this, but I share Valerie's concern about the amount of fill. And I think we should weigh in with the state about that. It's a significant amount of fill.
Well, I think what she's offered allows us to consider that more, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, there's been a theme running through these Concom meetings over the last few months. Bunch of development on Portsmouth Ave. These lots don't have a lot of depth because of the wetlands in back of them. Those wetlands are important. And this is not a typical commercial district like on Epping Road, where there are less wetlands impacts. There's just not a lot of depth to these
Right.
lots.
Right.
And we've seen it now in 3 applications.
Right.
2 on the west side, 1 on the east side of Portsmouth Ave. It's a consistent issue,
well, there's another one coming,
and there's another one coming.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to contradict that a little bit on this lot. There is quite a big shot of upland on this lot, but what we're doing is instead pushing the whole development up front. And in the state of things, we're actually probably impacting more wetland because we're 300 feet away
Right.
from the other. So there's actually a little bit more depth to this lot. It's just way things are laid out and what's important and what's not.
So let me rephrase that. There's not an endless amount of depth to these lots.
That's better.
We're seeing impacts. We're seeing impacts on wetlands, we're seeing impacts on a neighborhood. Not on your, but on, so just to kind of draw the through line on all of these. On the impact that you were most concerned about across the road was addressed
Yeah.
because of your concern. So
Yeah.
you did a great job. As a group, you did a great job there.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
I had a couple questions too, if the board has exhausted theirs. Cindy, it looks like you're still retaining, or Dade Auto Holdings is still retaining access to the Volvo dealership. So I wonder if there's been consideration of merging, the use and spread. Obviously, there's a plan for continued pass-through there. Is there not an opportunity, and has the applicant considered an opportunity to shift so that more of the impacts are heading toward, say, the existing Volvo dealership and less toward the back of the lot?
So I can't fully speak to that, but I can speak to, because of looking at avoidance and minimization and discussions, but the required amount of parking really helped drive this, and the size of the building for the number of cars and everything. As far as if he could have shifted it more, that's a question that I can ask the engineer, but I believe because of those 2 things and the driving around and in and access and parking, those were the reasons why it was developed that way. But I will tell you, the big overriding thing really was the push to stay away from out back through this whole time. So that also is why I pushed parking out that way, because we weren't going back that way.
And so something that we hear a lot from car dealerships, especially on Portsmouth Ave, is that visibility of the inventory. With a lot of this parking not necessarily visible from Portsmouth Ave, is there possibility for under parking, parking underneath structures, parking in a, some sort of parking structure, anything to minimize that footprint?
No, but that's something that I can take back to the group and ask them.
Great.
Okay.
And then the other kind of high-level question I had, and I apologize that I typically weigh in on the TRC stage, so you would have heard this individually, is when you came to the Conservation Commission conceptually, you're correct in the statement that there wasn't discussion for local mitigation options. And I know the state rules have changed. The Conservation Commission have openly endorsed pickpocket dam removal. And so you've identified $200,000 of in lieu fees that will come as a result of this. And I'm wondering if, I know the applicant has a choice to offer in lieu fee over local mitigation. I wonder if the applicant would consider, and maybe this is a question you could bring back, a local mitigation of support for pickpocket dam
So
restoration.
we did
removal.
talk a little bit more about this at that other meeting. I'll sit down for this.
Yeah. Just bring the mic to you, please.
Oh.
No, the one right there. Yeah.
So, back in 2022, when we were doing this project, that's where I tried to start to formulate the ideas for mitigation. And you're right, the rules for mitigation changed a couple of years ago, where before we had to step through creation, restoration, and conservation before even getting the ability to do in lieu fee. Now, in lieu fee, you can just go straight there. So I know you had talked about that project, and I tried to do a little looking. The DES has in the past diverted and agreed to mitigation like that, but it has to be shovel-ready. And I couldn't find anything that had the actual plans, engineered plans approved. Does it have its wetlands permits and stuff like that?
So we do not have wetland permits in
Yep.
place. We have the feasibility study that looked at the options.
Mm-hmm.
They do have designs included in those. Those are on the town's website.
I did see that,
And,
yep.
and it's poised to go, and of course, it's being addressed because it's a Dam
Mm-hmm.
Safety Bureau requirement. So it's the state's arm that's sort of pushing the issue. All of that is available on the town's website. We do have wetland delineations. We do have proximate wetland impacts. I don't know that you could get a more shovel-ready project other than full design in front of you. So I would say it's there, and from my perspective, at least in terms of the role I play here, I would certainly advocate for you raising that with the applicant as a possibility, and perhaps bringing that to the state for consideration.
So, what I did read, looked at the options, but you guys have already agreed to an option then, is the
The select
removal?
board has committed.
To the removal?
To putting removal on the ballot.
Okay.
For the townspeople to vote.
Okay,
And that will happen in March.
okay, all right. So, I'll talk to the owner, and I can reach out to SETA and talk to her about, when and how they would contribute to that. I know in another one we did, they already had the wetlands permitting done, but sometimes they might even allow some of that funds to be used to do the wetland permitting for a project. So let's see, what SETA thinks, what the owner thinks, and if that's something that works out, then I'm sure that the owner probably doesn't have an issue with it.
And could you just define SETA? I don't know that.
Oh, SETA Detzel is the mitigation, she leads mitigation now. Lori Summer retired
gotcha.
a couple of years ago.
Okay, that's someone's
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, sorry about
That's
that.
We thought it was an acronym.
I did.
I did
That's true, because CELT is an acronym over here too on his vest.
So when you're talking to the owner, again, and I know we've talked about this, and this is the last time I'll bring it up, but because of this project is so big, it's so massive, if you could just perhaps raise the issue of, is there any way it can be further reduced, then this committee would be happy to hear back about that.
Are you talking about the building?
Just the whole impact on the wetlands. Are there any other brilliant ideas you can come up with in the middle of the night to reduce it?
Well, I think, and I hear you there, I think part of the reason why the impact is a little higher, but it is well within the realm for this size project.
Right.
Is because we kept everything
I know.
up front. And so the idea being that estuary and the wetlands associated with Parkman Brook are a lot higher value than the disturbed invasive species riddled areas that are receiving the discharge from the detention basins and McDonald's up front there.
If I may say, you had said the owner knows what he needs. And the building next door is 18,000 square feet, and I believe this is 34, so we're almost doubling in size.
I think, and I don't want to speak for the owner or the engineer in the sizing, but I think if you ask him, he will tell you that What his building is over there is way too small right now.
Does Kia have requirements for, so the town has been approached by all three Portsmouth Ave dealerships saying their existing sites are too small and corporate requires certain number of inventory. And every single one of them has had applications before this board and others to expand. Are there requirements for Kia in terms of inventory, and is this?
There's requirements from them all. I can't speak to them because I'm focused on the wetlands portions, but
So my question is, does this reflect that minimum?
that's
or
what our,
maximum, or-
yeah, no, that's what the design was for, to meet the requirements, so.
I mean, this is a one-story building again, we're looking at. Because my thought was to reduce the footprint by putting a second story in for offices or whatever, but.
Yeah, I guess my take too is it's a large impact to a sensitive area.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm struck by the design that has parking through the whole back. There's a parking almost, or driveways along the whole back portion of the design. You know, the wall isn't up against building, or even the driveway around the building, it's up against directly head-in parking spaces all along that. So we're saying, yes, you need those. You're saying, yes, you need all those parking spots right there. If you could eliminate that, you know, that's another, what, 8 feet, 10 feet, and would reduce the height of the wall, which is concerning to me to build such a tall retaining wall.
A wall.
Although there's temporary impacts, I mean, having such a feature there will impact the natural ecosystem. You know, having a 23-foot wall, you know, 1 foot away from that is not going to be a unimpacted wetland.
Yeah.
There will be impacts from that, such a structure. Because of shading, because of lots of reasons. So I guess I would just echo that this feels like a lot. That's what I felt when you brought this to us in 2022. This feels like too much of an wetland impact. I still feel that way. And now you're mentioning there's upland in other part of the site that isn't being utilized.
Yes, near Parkland Brook system.
Behind McDonald's.
I mean, this was why we were here before in 2022. We were showing the design and pushing it out front, away from those wetlands. The DES Wetlands Bureau and the Army Corps of Engineers were in favor of this design as well, keeping it away from those sensitive areas. And then again, I'll just reiterate, when we do minimization for the Wetlands Bureau, a retaining wall is a standard tool that they use and approve as
Certainly.
being the least impacting. If you can imagine, this is a 1-to-1 slope here, okay, and it's another 8,000 square feet of temporary impact, right, for the surcharging. Imagine the wall gone.
So 1.5 to 1.
Yep, okay, 1.5 to 1, which might not even be legal from the planning perspective. You might require 2 to 1 with the guardrail. But imagine no wall, they would have to do a slope like this, probably 2 to 1. I don't know what your requirements are. So there would right away be 8,000 square foot more.
I get the benefits of the wall
Yeah.
and why you designed it that way, but I guess the fact that it's called temporary, I guess I'm slightly just commenting that the fact that it's green, temporary impacts. There.
I think it was just the color the engineer used to show the.
Yeah, no, I don't care what the color is. I just am acknowledging that in practice that there is some sort of buffer that to have have it go right up to the wall, to me feels like in a minimization, an over minimization of the impact that this development will have on the landscape.
Well, the DES won't permit fill for a buffer to the wetland. That's kind of anti to the impacts. So that's why a wall is frequently used to minimize.
I got it.
Yeah.
This is for the state, and that's how the state
Yeah.
does it, but this is, I guess, my discussion on it, sure.
At what point does the wall go in?
So I think that they're going to use sheet piling during the
They're
surcharging.
going to drive that?
And drive it in, use the temporary fill to help hold and surcharge it, and then do the surcharging, and then when they're done, you know, the wall will be finalized when the temporary fill is pulled
But
out.
so the sheet piling isn't the final wall?
I think that they're doing something on the front side of it. I
Yeah, the
think
plans
sheet
show
piling.
a retaining wall at the back edge of the parking lot, followed by this other temporary
Sheet
retaining
piling,
wall.
yep.
That's being used to hold in the slope during the compression phase. That's identified as temporary impacts.
Why couldn't the sheet piling be used as the wall? Since for all intents and purposes, nobody will ever see it during the charging and not have that temporary fill? Because the temporary fill.
So that I am not qualified to answer, but my understanding from the geotech guy is they need that to kind of like formulate a kind of compression area around the area. I am not doing it justice. That is something that the geotech should answer for you.
Okay.
Okay.
So it does talk about clay soils are present, and to remove the moisture from the clay soils, they need to compress it and put like a wick system
Yeah,
or
you
something
have
like
wicks.
that.
Right,
So if you're putting a retaining wall on clay soil, it's not tight enough because it still has that moisture in
But
there.
sheet
So
piling
they-
is going through that layer
Yeah,
and much deeper.
yeah.
That's where the surcharging is occurring, is on that deep
It's kind of like a
material.
cofferdam, you know.
Almost like that. I think the weight of that temporary fill just kind of boxes it in with the natural slopes on either side. But that's a geotech question, and I'm sure we can have a good answer for you on that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
you know, if.
I don't want to give you incorrect information. I know what I was told from the
'cause
geotech
it seems
guy.
like in the final fill area is where you need the compression.
Yep.
And the final fill area is within that sheet piling. So,
I think they need the structural integrity of that temporary fill, honestly, to really
Until-
help compress it.
until the soil,
Yeah. And then once they have that conate water out of those, clay particles, then everything starts to get nice and tight in there.
okay.
This is maybe a stupid question, but could they ever tear the back part? Tear it down, the back?
Well, we have in the past on
Yeah.
some walls that are a lot taller.
Yeah.
But that would require more wetland impact.
Oh,
Because, you
Oh,
gotta tear
oh,
2 feet,
oh,
tear
okay,
and
yeah.
out.
right.
I'm not an engineer.
Neither am I. so
I know.
it's two of us.
I just look at this and I could just see, I just feel like to an engineer, there's a solution to anything.
Well, that's their job.
I guess so. They take a problem and they mold it till they're like this will work. This project is ridiculous. The amount of wetland that's being filled in for this really wild development plan is just, I don't know. I'm having a hard time with it. That said, I appreciate the design purposely taking it out of the the area that was seen as, future transitional marsh. I think that's great. The benefit of, we're not splitting wetland systems here, we're literally chopping off the head of a wetland system. So that's something. That all said, though, it's gigantic, and I guess I will pose a question, though, just for the record, just so I don't keep going on about how I think it's ridiculous. The walls themselves, I mean, are there any kind of, what are the chances of failure of a wall like this, I guess would be? Because with the amount of fill, if that were to become, fluid and go, that would fill in, it would have impacts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the whole point of the surcharging, is that it won't be fluid. And that's, engineering-wise, as a structural engineer and geotech guys, and they do this kind of site work all the time. And the plan they came up with is, will have the structural integrity, and they're the ones that designed this wall. And I shouldn't even be speaking to the wall because I am a wetland scientist. I know that those people were working on it. I know the surcharging. I've been on other projects where they've done this type of work. So I've seen it work, and I think it's just something that maybe isn't too common, but honestly, these days, we see more and more land like this. And the days of real good land everywhere is just not around, especially when you have a predefined commercial zone, and that's where things got to fit. So you're looking at different engineering and different ways to develop the site.
Great. And then I guess follow-up questions, unless anyone else wants the mic. I assume discussions of stormwater amounts, movement of, and mechanisms to control will take place further down the road when we come back for local permits? Or can we start talking about it now?
Yeah, no, we're already in that process because the engineer met preliminarily. And so for town submittal, it'll meet all town requirements, as well as we'll put forward something along that same lines with the plan.
And can you explain a little bit about current conditions where stormwater from the adjacent properties is this all sort of going into this gully? And if so,
Sure.
how is that going to be managed?
So it's an interesting site because this wetland has actually morphed in size. If you look at this, you'll notice all these little points. And if you follow and look at where these points come from, they're coming from certain stormwater inputs from 2 detention basins that are on site, one over here, one right here. And then we have catch basins in McDonald's, and we have overland sheet flow that is also flowing down this steep hill that you can see.
Right.
So it is morphed. So when we looked at the wetland functions and values here, a lot of this wetland has been made by human disturbance surrounding it. Okay, that's another reason why we looked, as this wetland as being lower functioning. Now, someone might say, well, isn't it taking that stormwater? Sure it is, untreated stormwater with the exception of this. This project is actually going to intercept this water and treat it.
So I would assume then that the calculations of the water coming off the properties that would be creating those wetlands are going to be factored into?
Yeah, they always are.
All right.
It's required.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could see it when we walked today.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The catch basins and stuff that were all.
All going right in there.
feeding into that, yeah. So do we want to wait?
I
Yeah.
guess before you
And
go
get
there,
these
can I
questions?
just bring 2 points up?
Okay.
Trevor, I think you had a good point in raising that, yes, stormwater will be addressed ultimately with the project. The reality is, the reason we have stormwater requirements in our local permit is to protect the resource. And so you're making a decision on a permit for a resource that requires some protection. So I would encourage you to consider stormwater requirements pre-developed during this settling phase, or whatever we want to call it. Right now, you have absolutely nothing, no indication other than a silt sock for what will hold any runoff to this property. You don't know, so for a year, this will be here. You don't know if it's open soil. You don't know any of that. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I would encourage you to consider, so we've got a 20-plus foot retaining wall and a slope here. Consider the reality of 20 feet of soil sitting on vegetation. And is that really a temporary impact? I just want you to think about that.
I can actually show you pictures of the site in Rochester.
Great, I'd love to.
Yep.
I'd love to see it.
It's actually common now to do that in temporary impacts because it protects the natural wetland soil and the vegetation. In fact, usually I'm building a wetland in Plymouth right now, and what we do is we cut the vegetation and we just move it. And when we do that, you get so much better growth. Plants are resilient. And that's why the DES limits how long that temporary impact can be there. Because they know after a year, your chances are it's not getting light, it'll start to degrade a little bit.
I think that's helpful, and it might be helpful in the commission's consideration to bring some of those details. How long
Yeah.
was the fill there? What was,
Yeah.
the depth of that fill, et cetera,
Yeah.
in the Rochester example.
Yep, I can do that.
And then, as you said, then the stormwater information will come back also. Okay?
But I would encourage you not to wait for, I guess my point of that was, I would not wait until the local permits are filed.
No, but
to
she's
talk
bringing it
about
back
that.
in a month.
Yeah, and I wanted to just, you are talking about in the surcharging phase, because we do have
Correct.
stormwater in there.
Correct.
But the surcharge, so what I can do is we can put together a plan for the surcharge phase. And we'll submit that when we answer the questions.
When you come back next month.
Actually, no, you'll have it before then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
You'll have it beforehand.
All right, nice.
Kristen, you brought up something today, that they're dealing with the stormwater going that way, but they weren't addressing the water coming this way.
Yeah, I guess I was just commenting on the application material.
Yeah.
And how the application talks a lot about stormwater that comes from Portsmouth Ave and heads toward Parkman Brook.
yeah.
And so I was curious, it almost negates that any water comes inward from
Right,
Parkman
right.
Brook. We know that is the case because
Right.
if you look at the models for not just sea level rise, but just storm surge under mean high water, with a storm surge, there's water movement modeled there.
Wow.
So I would assume it's happening. We looked, Keith may or may not
Yeah.
have seen some sort of vegetation hung up in, along one of the drainage channels. We didn't
It
really
did.
spend a lot of
There's
time.
a mouse trap and some other debris that looked like it had washed
Right.
up
Yeah.
coming from.
So
there's
there's quite
some-
an impact.
Yeah.
that way.
Was look for that along slopes to see where the water came from. Like you said, you can see the debris that have been brought up in the past. There was a bit, not a tremendous amount, but there was some.
Okay, so we're going to, I guess, get some answers to those questions. And then next month, we can maybe take the next step.
So you'll submit something to the state so they're aware of
Yeah,
that?
I'll ask Kristen for like a 2-day extension.
Will you CC me on that?
Huh?
Will you CC me on that?
I will,
Thank you.
I will.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
And so we don't need to send a separate communication to the state saying that we understand there's a couple-day extension.
Sure, we could do that,
Okay.
if the
Don't you
commission
think?
wishes.
We'll just send our own little note too, saying that we understand there's a couple-day extension to the state deadline, and we look forward to hearing back all the answers.
That probably makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do you want a
Appreciate it.
motion? Do we want a motion?
Move,
to that?
gonna move.
Sure. Let's do a motion on that.
Okay, go ahead.
I motion that we send communications to the state telling them we understand from the applicant that they are going to request a 2-day extension, and thus we will be able to review it at our next Conservation Commission in November.
I'll second that.
That's a long motion.
Any discussion? There is none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. Unanimous. All right, next, committee reports. Under property management, McDonald Gate operation is proposed to end the season on October 25th. Still a
So
go?
typically, we operate the gate with volunteers and stop operating it in the winter just because it's easier. So I'm proposing that stops on October 25th. And because it's conservation land, it's up to you to
Okay.
support that or not.
Do you need a motion for that, or?
Sure.
Okay. I move that we close the McDonald Gate on October 25th.
I second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, unanimous. A Rains repair update. Kristen and Keith, I think. He's spending a lot of time up there.
That's fun.
Kristen, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll start mine. Stephen Bedard has been making steady progress at Rains Barn. We will be needing an extension. He anticipates finishing the east side of the barn, the clapboard repair and whatnot, next year. So it would be helpful to know that the commission supports such an extension. It will require approval from the board of directors, from LCHIP, Land Community Heritage Investment Program, as well as Russ Dean would need to sign a contract extension. The other contractor, as you know, we hired LGT Restoration to do clapboard and painting and scraping, trim, et cetera, on the west and the north side. They have finalized their work. I think it looks great. I sent around some pictures to the board so you saw a sense for what it looks like. So with those two done, really the remaining task is a fire detection system, and an interior staircase. We talked about deferring the interior staircase. The fire detection system, Russ Dean proposed, would be paid out of the unpaid fund balance, I think, I don't know.
In his initial
In his
budget
initial budget.
presentation, he indicated that it would be a warrant article that would be paid by unpaid fund balance.
Right, so the next steps for that would be, the budget committee needs to support that, the select board moves that forward to the warrant, assuming everything goes well, and then that would be a voter decision.
Now, the fire detection system, that would be installed by an electrician, I would assume?
Yeah, so Jeff Beck, who's our facilities coordinator, had, and I can't remember the company name, but somebody who specializes in that. It's not like Brinks or
Because
something, but.
I believe maybe Keith had mentioned there's a couple other electrical issues possibly in there that it might be good to address, some lights and a few things like that. And it might be a good idea to bundle the two together, if we could.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't,
assuming that it's not a total.
I don't think we
rewire.
have a wiring deficiency. I think we just need some bulbs replaced.
Okay, well, but maybe we need to make that evaluation.
Yeah.
And then if there is any, say, fixture or socket replacement, switch replacement that needs to take place, if we already have an electrician on site doing other work, it might be the most efficient way to get that done too.
Yeah, I can have Jeff take a look. In your budget request for next year, there is $1,000 of contractor funding. So it's kind of beyond me to go back and amend the budget request. It's sort of
Yeah.
marching its way through the process, but I think that we could tack something on, I suspect.
And Stephen might be a
But
good
we
person
do
to
have a
ask.
town,
Stephen might be a good person to ask too, because by now, there's nobody that probably knows that building better than he does.
it's true, yep. Yep.
And I also think it's great to have him finish that back half. LGT did a really nice job on what they had to do. Is but it's much more straightforward than a lot of the stuff Stevens had to tackle, like the day you gave me the tour. And there's a higher level of complexity on that eastern side to what has to be done. Because he's really a craftsman. And
That's true.
I think it's worth the extension to have him do that work.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
It was even longer than yours.
So just to clarify, the motion is to extend the contract,
Yes.
ask the town manager to extend the contract till next year.
Absolutely, yes.
That's what Keith is seconding.
Yes.
Any further editorial discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
What's Keith doing out of Reigns?
Oh, yeah. What isn't he doing?
Well, I would really, as stated previously, I would like to see an event out there. I think it's a wonderful place. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of things that could be done outside that, nothing too complicated this other than the poison ivy, right? So just a matter of getting it cut back and make it usable. I do see more and more people out there. I think as the word gets out, there'll be a need for additional parking. And that can be accomplished by just sort of cleaning up along the wall that runs along Route 85. Limbing some of the overhanging limbs so they don't scrape your car, cutting a few stumps that are there. As you put on the list that you'd given me, Kristen, to clear the top of the hill by the Leopold benches, clear around a little bit around the trees, and just do right around the immediate barn, keep up with it better, so it doesn't ever get to be 5 feet high, and making it look like it's an abandoned, unused building. It's really starting to get there. It's very encouraging I encourage all of you to take a visit out there, either, while Stephen's working or even afterwards, just walk around. It's wonderful. And, it's 50 acres, is that correct? 50 acres there?
Just under.
Yeah, and there's some cool stuff, there's a cattle underpass, which is neat. And beyond that, there's the old site of the Exeter landing where they used to ship the cattle during the Civil War. So there's a lot of cool things out there. There's a lot can be done. It just needs some people to head out and do them. The cemetery is a nice spot as well. And, like we had talked about stargazing, maybe a bonfire of some sort, maybe just sort of coordinate some events to get more public interest in being there. And, that's what I would like to see.
Well, it's becoming more and more attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done a great job.
Yeah, I drive by
Stephen's
there.
awesome, man. Talking to him, he's a good dude. So,
I
yeah.
drive by there every day, and it just looks better and better all the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
And the haying went well with the farmers, had a good hay season, and we're okay with how all that went?
Yeah, it went great. I actually ran into Darren Davis's mom in the hall yesterday, and she was excited about rains and let her know that it's looking great. They got 2 cuts this year, so I think
Good.
they're feeling pretty happy with the arrangement.
Great.
Yeah, now, I
And
mean.
so
it
it's
looks-
cut out there, it's,
Yeah, it looks
It
like
is
it was
cut.
mowed.
yeah, it's like
You know, it's a little
great
taller
time to
than
be
that,
out
but
there.
it's very, very, you know, dogs and people, and it's great. You feel, wow, what a spot.
Right, right now with the
Especially the
foliage.
foliage, yeah,
It's a great
it's
time
off
to
the
go to
look, right?
Rains, if
Yep.
you're listening out there.
Mm.
All right.
I had one other thing, if I could
Oh,
mention.
go ahead.
So I spoke with Amanda Kelly today. We're trying to organize sort of a system of volunteer projects to do around town, working with the Conservation Commission, and Kristen was kind enough to make a fairly extensive list of things to do, which is good. She's good like that. So then working with Greg at Parks and Rec to sort of meld these together and get some volunteers to do a lot of these little things that we would make our town just better. You know, just more sort of, not necessarily maintenance, but sort of kind of improvements, you know, and additions, and just getting some people out there to really think about using spaces in different ways to just get more people involved. And we came up with a system that we're working on that would be able to, you know, list all the things that need to be done, and then be able to add to that list based on input from the public, and run those things by the different department heads, so that we're not doing something that, you know, stepping on any toes, which I'm famous for. So that, you know, and try to get more things done so that we all can enjoy the great outdoors here in Exeter. It's just a wonderful, awesome place to live. And I think a lot of people are really interested in contributing what they can, whether it's just a couple hours. A lot of times, a lot of these things take an hour. They take 2 hours. This is not a commitment of weeks and months. You know, it's just little things here and there that can make massive improvements, from weeding a small
Yes,
area
That's right.
to, you know,
That's right.
helping out in larger projects,
Hill Park.
cemeteries, et cetera. There's just a ton of things to do. So people have been living here for hundreds of years, and we need to keep up with all these
Yeah.
things. So that was that. So more to come on that.
We start a list not only of things to do, but things that have been accomplished and by who.
Yeah.
You know, have,
Well, I find that it's better, it's amazing what can get done if no one has to have the credit. That's my philosophy.
but I think it also, it builds a sense of momentum, though.
True.
When people can see things getting checked off. Because like you said, there's varying sizes of projects that can be done.
Mm.
And a lot of times people don't have 2 or 3 days to put into something.
But they have 2 or 3 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is what we're trying to organize this, and Amanda's just much more tech savvy than I am, so she's gonna try to get all that.
Kind of like what we talked about. right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So, that's in progress. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to see a spotlight on Gale Park. I know you don't want to say, oh, you know, look what Keith did, but it looks
I had a lot of help.
fantastic.
I had a lot of
It
help,
looks
and-
absolutely fantastic, and I think you could say this was a volunteer effort to just draw people in to what, you know, what can be accomplished in town.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
would
a
like to see
that's a
that on
national
the-
treasure in my
Yeah,
mind.
it
so
really is.
I wanted to see it look
Yeah.
like an outdoor
People-
cathedral.
People know it's there now, that statue. They didn't.
Yeah, and there's so many
It was sort of
opportunities
a-
like that.
Around town.
You know,
yeah.
around town, there really are. Again, we've been in this area for 400 years, right? So there's just a lot of things that could use our attention, and let's get out and do them.
I just, following up, which park was this? The one by Linden?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gale Park.
Yeah,
The triangle.
across from,
Triangle,
yeah. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, I've gone in there recently and people say, oh my gosh, I never noticed this before.
Yeah, I was thinking
because
a lot of
it's
people
cleared
didn't
up.
really know it was there.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
it was
the
so
guy-
overgrown. It looks fantastic.
The guy did the Lincoln Memorial and the
Yeah.
Minuteman statue, is an Exeter
Yeah.
native. And there are many reasons
Yeah.
to look around at these places, you know, this, from 1,000 feet, this is a wonderful place to live.
Yeah.
It really is,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah, we haven't gone public yet. I need to do one, like, just a brief write-up of each hike that we can post and start publicizing it. Kristen has been a huge help. We've got the stickers printed up, and I think you've gotten them already, so we'll see who gets the first one, I guess. But,
I think Drew should get it.
what's that? Yeah. What's that?
Drew,
Drew should get it.
Yeah,
I'll do it.
he could get out there in his
I'm
electric
out there.
wheelchair and
You could really
I
set
don't
an
think that would
example for people.
I'm gonna have to get a waiver, but anyways, I just want to make sure that people know where to park so that they're kind of doing it right and everything like that, and then a little description so they know what they're getting themselves into. I was hoping to have it done by tonight, but unfortunately, my computer that has all the stuff on it is getting repaired, so hopefully I'll have that ready in the next week. And Kristen was, like I said, a big help in getting the stickers printed out. And what was the final cost on the stickers, Kristen? Do you remember? No?
$175? It was much cheaper than we budgeted.
Yeah, so.
Wow, those
oh,
are
that
cool.
is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Great design.
And so again, if for just to remind people, it's like we've picked 6 hikes that are all around the various, mostly conservation land in Exeter. And we'll post maps for people. And then if people do all 6 hikes, then they can fill out a little application form and they get one of our stickers here. Yeah, good stuff.
Stickers.
And so, yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything like that, or.
Sign me up,
Yeah, and so I've tried to go out and do all of them just to kind of see. I guess the one that I might change is the Jolly Rand, because right now I just have like an out and back, but I think that there's like a ton of really nice trails that go kind of through Riverwoods and everything, and so maybe kind of rerouting it so you kind of take advantage of some of those trails.
But you
and
could take a
everything.
loop
Pete's.
all the way around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take that right on Pete's Trail.
Yeah.
Yep,
and then you
that's
go-
kind of what I'm
it
thinking.
loops
Yeah.
all the way around.
And so it'd be like a giant like loop and then back
Yeah.
out like
Yeah.
Lollipop a little bit, but.
Yeah, it's like 3 to 4 miles.
And I think one of the main objectives I have for this is just I feel like a lot of people, and this is maybe a little bit to what Keith was saying, is people don't even realize how many different places there are within half a mile of their house. And I've heard that from people. And so this way people will be like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. And so,
Yep.
good stuff. And so
All right.
hopefully we'll get people have, this is like the time of year to go out and hike, I think, and
It's the best.
lots of acorns out there, but that's about the only thing. And the foliage is, we'll be hitting right at peak foliage when we start this thing, so.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
I love this. I think it has all the right pieces. It's like, it's got the reward, it's got the fun, it's got the local, but it also has like the appropriate amount of structure, I think. Because like you were mentioning, and like, there's people that like want to do stuff, but they don't know what it is, or even if they like get out there, and maybe they get it over their heads, but it's like, this is like nice and served up. You say like, no, these are the trails, these are the loops, here's what you can expect, and hey, you get a sticker in the end, so
Yeah.
we'll go get them. I think it's great.
And so, and like, some of them, there are various levels of challenge to them too. The one in Oakland's Forest, I think is going to be the crux pitch of it all, but good stuff.
Yes.
Great job putting it
Great.
together.
Awesome. And they'll get to see all the, also to what Keith was saying about the volunteerism, I think, is you'll see a lot of bridges and stuff that are necessary for these hiking loops to be able to be done, and a lot of them are just volunteers.
Volunteers,
Like a lot of the bridges that we built were, some guy knew a guy who was getting rid of his deck, and so he said, hey, what are you gonna do with all that extra wood? And so the deck boards were all gone, but all the stringers were still pretty good, and so those are 2x6s, and so it doesn't cost the town anything other than the volunteers. And so many people want to help if you just give them the infrastructure to, like, hey, this is something that needs to be done. And, like for example, like you'll see a bridge that's missing some planks out in the forest, and it'll stay that way for a long time until somebody says, hey, there's this bridge that needs planks repaired, and then you get 10 people that say, oh, I'll walk in there and fix it, and I got some wood in my garage, and anyways.
Well, I just fixed the one by Sawbellies on Sunday.
Nice, there you go. Volunteerism at its finest.
It's, well, just gives me a chance to be by myself.
Yeah.
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 And I think there's a lot of people that if you just tell them, hey, here's a need, then they'll be out there doing whatever projects you kind of can demonstrate. Anyway, so hopefully we'll have some good results next
Well, to
meeting.
feed back into what Keith was saying too, a lot of times, all it takes is communicating that need out to a group. And perfect example is Fort Rock Riders.
Yep.
If there is trail work or bridge work that needs to be done, it gets publicized on there, and in fairly short order, somebody jumps on it. And it's different people all the time. You know, a lot of the same characters, but, and I think with what you're proposing, if
Just trying to get more people into the fold.
if the publicity is out there that these projects are available, then people can decide what they want to bite off,
Exactly.
you know? All right, thanks, Kyle.
Can I just say, Kyle, I would, on Oakland's, mention that people should wear orange vests?
Yep. And, yeah,
Cuba Road, too.
QB Road,
Cuba
too,
Road,
yeah.
Yeah. I wear it everywhere, just in case, yeah.
This blanket statement though.
Yeah.
I once saw a guy on the rail trail, the Rockingham Rail Trail out there, riding his bike, carrying a rifle. And when I got back to the end where the parking lot was, there was a deer right next to what I assume was his truck, just standing there. I was like, he could have just, didn't even have to do the bike thing.
I like that.
All right. Other committee reports, river study, sustainability, energy, tree, CC roundtable, anything in that?
No, I don't think there's really anything big. You're aware of the tree inventory. The River Study Committee is, talking about Pickpocket Dam. They're also, if you missed the last River Study Committee meeting, there was a great presentation about the other dam that we have at the reservoir, and what sort of feasibility analysis needs to happen for that. It is also a high hazard dam, so that's a bit of a news bit. And then Energy Committee is doing their window dressers program, and then the Seacoast Green Challenge, which is trying to promote people to opt up to a higher percentage of renewable energy. And it's kind of like a friendly competition with other Seacoast towns. So far, I think we're third, so getting there.
You're not going to settle for that.
Sustainability has a couple of great potential projects that might hit the warrant. One is
The styrofoam recycling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're also, they moved their meeting. We had several vacancies for a while. Now we have, I think, 3 applicants for 2 vacancies, which is really exciting.
Awesome.
I
I
haven't
didn't know
shared
that.
yet.
I didn't know that.
And so they're composting, we're working with Public Works to kind of redesign the transfer facility, and they're also doing some background research on our waste management contract and what regional communities are doing to try to improve our waste management contract that will be out to bid again in 2027.
Yeah, we had a huge increase in our solid waste contract. And the future is absolutely for us to get more organized with our stream and turn something that we're paying someone to haul away and throw in a landfill, and instead organize it so that it might become a revenue stream for the town. So all this work sustainability is doing with Kristen, taking the lead, is all about that, reducing the landfill impact and reducing the cost. Really makes a lot of financial sense to invest in our transfer station.
And Dan,
And turn it into an innovation and recycling leader.
and when you say a huge increase, was that in cost or in like volume of trash?
Cost. Yeah, it's getting more and more expensive to put things in landfills because there's less and less space in landfills.
Right.
We've got to move away from just leaning on that. And again, organizing what we call our trash stream and segmenting it out can turn it into a revenue stream. It's simply a matter of organization. There are lots of towns that are doing it. Rye does it. Lee's got an amazing transfer station or recycling center facility.
Really?
And it's a revenue source for the town. So instead of paying, upwards close to $1 million to have someone put things in landfill, we could start to create a revenue stream. But we got to get organized and we have to invest. And the styrofoam thing is a great example of that. And the improvements to the transfer station and trying to augment the composting program that that the sustainability committee has piloted. Those are great examples of beginnings. But the town has to invest, and in the end, that investment will pay back over and over again if we can get organized.
I, for one, can't believe how much I reduce my trash by composting, because I eat so many vegetables anyway. I can't believe I didn't do that for years, but
Yeah.
my trash is, I reduced so much because of that. And I just bring it to the transfer station in a compostable bag. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a great program.
yeah,
And we're just scratching the surface on what we
yeah.
could do with that.
Right.
All right. We have some minutes to approve from the September 10th meeting. I was not here.
I apologize. I think we should defer vote on that, because I think it was Nick and Connor are confused in
Yes,
multiple
at
places.
the end.
Who said that?
Yeah.
Was that Nick that said that to me? And I did
I-
not get a chance to go through.
I just said it to these guys tonight.
Oh, okay. So I think we need to figure out where those corrections are and just do it
Go
at the next
go
one.
through the minutes and make
Yeah.
sure. Yep.
And then, do we need to make any correction to that other phosphate permit thing where, I think it's,
So my memo, you mean?
right, or not?
So I think I sent an email about that. I had erroneously said in my memo you supported the wetland application, which you didn't. I can edit that if you want in my memo.
I think, okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Oh, and also Valerie had mentioned, does the board want to make a statement in support of the removal of Pickpocket Dam?
Or send a letter or something.
That's a good idea.
There's time to do that.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be done right now.
No?
Okay.
But it would be
I
absolutely.
mean, we could just do it right now by emotions.
Timing wise, it might be better to hold your fire
You think so?
until it's actually on the warrant and like,
Okay,
And would it be
Yeah.
helpful?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right.
Yes, support is wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
It's the low-cost option. Removal is the
Right.
low-cost option. The primary opposition is people who own property near the dam and don't want to see the landscape change, and then some folks from out of town that don't want to see the impacts in Brownwood.
Right.
But for the town, it is a no-brainer. If you're a taxpayer in this town, dam removal is the right thing environmentally, it's the right thing financially, and we would love to have the Concom support.
Yeah.
So February-ish, January-ish, January?
Let me talk to the chair of the
Okay,
select board.
yeah.
and
Well,
find out.
you'll be here, so.
Yes,
You-
but I can.
You can let us know. when.
Nico will know exactly when the right point is that
Yeah.
you should endorse this wholeheartedly,
Yeah.
if you're so inclined. Not to presume.
I think we are.
Yeah.
All right. Has any, or, no, Connor's going to lead a coup, or Trevor's going to lead a coup, I believe. He wants to make a motion to continue the meeting forever. Is there a motion to adjourn? If there isn't, I'm going to make it.
Why don't you make it, Dave?
Okay, make a motion to adjourn at 8:41.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
You're tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.